Throughout the month of February, Denver 7 is celebrating Black History Month. Each week, we're bringing you stories of Black Coloradans and their contributions to Colorado. This week, I'm sharing a little-known story about the fight for civil rights in our state decades before the 1960s movement. When we talk about civil rights in our country, your mind may automatically go to these 1960s scenes. But in Colorado, a civil rights movement started nearly 100 years before this one.
Civil rights in Colorado goes back to the 1860s.
It's little known history, but author Adrian Miller says during that time a group of 100 black men sent a petition to the governor and other state leaders demanding black men receive the right to vote as soon as Colorado became a state.
That really held up the process and delayed statehood for Colorado. Now, part of it was because white men who were eligible to vote had objections to statehood for other reasons, but that was certainly part of the mix. And that actual petition did not fall on deaf ears, so people discussed that. And eventually, African-American men did get the right to vote when Colorado became a state in 1876.
Women would not receive that same right until 1893. But that's still almost 3 decades before the 19th Amendment gave all American women the right to vote. 1895 brought another civil rights victory for Black Coloradans.
Our General Assembly actually passed a civil rights law. That's what it was called at the time. And essentially it just said people of color could not be barred from any kind of public accommodations.
Representative Joseph H. Stewart was behind the legislation. He was born in Barbados, but made his way to Colorado as an attorney and really pushed for the bill.
He was able to get the bill through the legislature without any opposition. Now, I do have to qualify that without any opposition part because there were some people who were staunchly against this bill, but they decided to abstain.
The bill became Colorado law in 1895, but due to racism, it was never truly enforced.
A lot of times when there's landmark legislation or things that are passed to help the plight of African Americans, usually they don't have enough enforcement to really make a difference, and that was the case here.
But the biggest blow to Colorado's civil rights law came from the federal government.
It's just about a year after this law passed, the United States Supreme Court passed Plessy v. Ferguson, which sanctioned racial segregation, or otherwise known as Jim Crow.
I'm not surprised to hear that we fought for those rights, but then they were not implemented in a way that was exactly what was intended.
But Colorado State Representative Leslie Harrod says she's also not surprised that the law was passed.
Colorado has really led the way on some of these issues. While we are still very late on a lot of issues, and we were late to allow women the right to vote, that should have been around since statehood, of course. But the people of Colorado have a tendency to stand up, fight for their rights, and create real change.
And that fight never went away.
The movement for Black lives has been happening for generations, right? It didn't just pop up this summer. And it's not something that has ended this past summer either. We will continue to fight for change, but we want to make sure that change is implemented in a way that is just and fair.
Harrod says Colorado's state motto means nothing without providence or nothing without God, a way to describe how early Coloradans found the strength to start the fight, and how today, Coloradans of color continue it.